I know we want to probably get started here. We've given a couple of minutes for folks to get in. So I'm actually just going to move into introductions. I'm going to be one of our co-hosts. I will be bringing bad jokes and technical solutioning and prototyping to the table, but I actually lead our solutions engineering team here at builder.io. And I'm partnering up with Chris over here, who I'll let to introduce himself.
Yeah, hi, I'm Chris. I'm a customer engineer here. I'll be bringing probably worse jokes and helping Alexis answer some questions here. Right, if we dive into it, look at the agenda. I'm going to just there we go. Um, so we're going to do a short intro, just cover what we're gonna do in the webinar, and then we'll do a live walkthrough, which Alexis is going to handle, and I'll cover what we're going to talk about then we'll do a Q&A. So I think Joe's mentioned, but at the bottom of Zoom you should see a Q&A tab. So if you could just pop your questions in there rather than in the chat, then we won't lose them. We can try and answer them as we go through, and also at the end in the Q&A section. We'll also be chatting as we go through in chat as well. And then, yeah, so there'll be a recording sent out afterwards as well if you registered. So yeah, if we get started. So what can Builder do? Among other things, it can create production-ready code. So it will automatically analyze your code base to understand the exact context, exactly what you've got in there. So it'll scan your existing files, components, and styles, and then it'll use that in the output. What this means is that the code generated is as if it's by one of your dev team. It won't be, generic code that you're kind of trying to shoehorn in and maybe refactor and try and make it pass your lints and try and make it match your style. It will be your own code generated by AI. This is obviously really important for, consistency and also for just keeping everything easy for onboarding and easy for going forward debugging. So how are we going to do this? If you go on to the next one. Yeah, so there's 3 ways to do this. We're going to start in all of these with a design in Figma. That's kind of a typical web workflow where you have a Figma design, and then we're going to take that into your code base or your website. So the way to do this is there's the first way. Yep, and we're going to walk through each of these. That's a great point to make. First way is for our CLI. So you would take the design from Figma, convert it to code, and then import it straight into your code base. There, for our CLI, you can make tweaks and changes and implement it that way, or you can take it from Figma into our UI. That will give you a preview of what you're going to import, and you can make changes there or add interactivity, and then import that into your code base. The third way would go for our publish product is take it from Figma straight into Builder. This is our visual CMS, and you can then make tweaks either with the AI assistant or manually, and then you can publish it direct to the web through Builder. We're going to kind of demo each of these really as we go through.
Liking some of the
So I think
questions already in these.
yes, it's
Yeah.
going. Yeah, chat is very busy. But yeah, we're trying to answer these as we go along. So there's a couple of use cases I've kind of covered. But yeah, we'll be taking a design from Figma and taking it straight into our code base through the CLI to make a kind of production-ready prototype. And then the next use case is taking a design into the UI, make some tweaks to it there, and then take it into your code base. So we're going to walk through kind of each of these as we go along. If you did want to follow along at all, then here's the Figma, and I'll stick it in chat. There's the Figma and the Codebase we'll be using. We're going to be using Material UI. Obviously, this could be any kind of design system, but in this case, just for ease of use, it's going to be Material UI, and so there's the Codebase that we're using when using a Next app router. So for the lab, I'm going to pass over to Alexis, and we'll get started.
All right, cool. So let me pop out of this. Oops, no one look at the outcomes. You did not see what we accomplished during this lab because we haven't accomplished anything, right? So just to preface through this, Chris did drop in those Figma and GitHub links to our chat. If folks want to follow along in real time, you're more than welcome to. And so I'll just say that I am on the screens page of the Material UI for Figma file. And these are publicly available, right? Everything I'm doing today, you can do on any sort of plan with Builder. So it's not going to have any enterprise only features. So if you have a free plan, pro plan, anything, feel free to follow along. There was a question I'll answer just at the onset while we kind of get started here. You can integrate with different JavaScript frameworks. We are actually going to ask Builder to integrate with Material UI, even though we're not explicitly component mapping to it. So we're going to explore some different things today. And the only other thing I'll say in advance is that we're prototyping, right? So we might break some things as we go along. We might get some errors here and there, and we'll just work our way through it. But hopefully at the end of this application prototyping session, we'll have an app. We'll have a couple of those different strategies for getting content into it from Figma, and we'll be able to iterate and refine from there. So no further ado, I'm going to click on the first screen that we're going to add into this application. And by means of introduction, first things first, let me just go ahead and click the export design. So first thing we're going to do is just get those various options available for this Figma screen, just a simple large login screen. And we're going to go the builder route initially. So this is the GUI route, right? So I'm going to click this view code and builder. And what we should get is that similar look and feel of that login form visualized here. Sweet, we've got our mobile and our web. We could preview, but I actually want to go ahead and change a couple of things here. And so what I'm going to say is let's add a background to the form and let's use the existing colors on the page. And so this is kind of an ambiguous prompt. I'm just going to start out by saying that, right? Like I'm not necessarily telling Builder like make the background gray, blue, some specific color. But I wanted to see that I'm using Material UI loosely. I wanted to see what the current page looks like. I kind of want to give us a little bit of a style, look and feel. And we'll just go with that, right? And then there's a couple of things that I'm not going to use the AI to edit. So maybe I'm just going to modify, like, let's change this text, right? Like, hey, let's log in. Let's get started today with an exclamation point because we are psyched. I'm going to change this button text to get started also. And I'm going to do something that's a little bit ugly right here, right? So I'm going to edit this link text. Let's say sign up and forgot password. And then I'm going to ask Builder to fix this. So it's a little bit prettier than it is right now, right? So let's say adjust the spacing around the link items. I should apologize in default because I'm not a designer by trade or nature. I am more of the development side of the house. So, some of this stuff is maybe going to be not so beautiful as we're going through this prototyping flow, but we're going to make it better, right? So overall, this is what I kind of want to start with, and I'm going to accept this. So we've got that mobile view, we've got that web view, and I'm going to hop into the develop tab now. There's other stuff we could have done here. I'll just say by means of introduction, like we could have gone into our style tab. We could have integrated different fonts, different background colors, different borders, changed a lot here. But really, what I'm most interested in is actually grabbing this command right here. And then I'm going to go to my localhost application. Hey, look at that. This is the sample app that you're going to get if you do run that Next.js example from Material UI. Very, very basic right now, right? So we've got an about page, a home page. I'm going to pull up my Codebase and I'm going to paste in that command that Builder gave me. And so what Builder should do at this point is actually ask me, okay, you've got this modified design where we changed some of the text, we changed some things there. What do you want to do now? And so what I'm going to say is let's add a new login page. Let's use my existing components and let's use MUI styling just to kind of get Builder to start recognizing that I'm using Material UI, right? So as Builder does this initial step, it's going to search the code base. It's going to look for those files that are going to help it build out what this login page should look like. Pretty simple example app so far, so we don't have a ton of context, but just something I want to call out as you see the code being output is that you can actually see that it's importing in those existing Material UI components, which is pretty cool, right? Because I haven't done a lot besides Prompt Builder to use that. So, I'll pause there for a second, just kind of let it keep generating before we get something. And this was actually pretty quick, but we've got the implementation plan being spit out right now. So I should, with any luck, be able to type in login, and we should see our little login form actually using the Material UI components. And so I've still got my text, still got, email, password, sign in, forgot password, don't have an account, sign up, some different things here. I think my style got slightly changed because I made an uglier version of the Material UI components in my actual prototyping developed dashboard. If I wanted to keep everything the same as I had it within that dashboard, I could have told Builder to create a new component instead of using my existing components, but it's actually close to what I probably want, right? And so if I pull back up my command line, you'll see I have a couple different options here. I can accept this design and then keep iterating upon it. I can refine this design if maybe it accidentally was broken when it initially created this, or maybe there's something that's just not right. Or if maybe I've started iterating already, I can undo the last change the builder made to go back in history to something beforehand. But I'm pretty happy with this as a base, so I'm going to accept and continue. And what I'd like to do now is actually show an alert to users if they don't fill out a required field. Sorry, words are hard. And so what I'm going to say is let's show an alert to the user if the user does not fill out a required field. And so what I want them to say, actually, let's say form field, let's be as explicit as possible before clicking the submit button because this is a form. And let's make sure that we say make both the email and password fields required. I think that should give us a good basis for this. And so when we finally submit this one, you're going to see that it gets a lot more scoped in terms of the files it's reading, right? So it's only looking at the login form and then my actual page for the login app itself. And so hopefully this implementation is going to be pretty speedy. I will say I'll keep an eye on, Chris, if we got any questions or anything in the chat, we can start to look at.
Yeah,
Let's
just looking
see.
through those.
Oh, sweet. Okay, thank you. All right, then I'm
All
gonna
right.
I'm gonna throw Chris to the chat. And I think everyone's doing this, but if you do have questions, please feel free to put them into that questions mode. Let's see. And yes, code generation is
Yes.
adaptive based on the Codebase style, and that's actually what we're seeing here. And so let me go back here. Let's double check that ours works. So I think what we should be able to see is if I click this, yes, I get alerts now to tell my user that they're doing something I do not want. And so let me actually type this. I don't want to save that one password. Thank you for being helpful, but you can see that alerting has come out, right? So we can see what our required fields are, and we can see that if I try to sign in without either of those, we do have that validation filled out at this point. So that's actually pretty good. That's what I want at this point. My toggle me button already works. I think at this point, the only other thing I'm going to say is that, we've got to remember me. Let's try to reduce. Actually, I'm pretty happy with the header spacing on this. I was going to say we could reduce the padding, reduce the spacing, but this isn't bad. So I think what I'm going to do is actually just accept this. We're going to get out of here and let's do something else. And when I say something else, I want to add in another page. And so let's actually scroll down. This is the way that I would start to knit together the logic for different pages using the builder product is I would point builder to where I wanted a new page integrated, right? So I'm going to click export on this design. This has got a lot more going on than a simple login form, right? Like we've got a header, we've got a search, we've got, different actions, different toggles, even different product cards on this. And so this one might take a second longer for us to do that initial import. But now we're going to be able to just grab the CLI, and I'm not going to hop into Builder this time for this one. I'm going to hop right into my local host. And so let me actually get Zoom windows out of the way because they're kind of hopping at me right there. And let me pull open the command line again. And so let's paste that one in, the CLI that we just got from that jobs dashboard. And for this one, let's just tell Builder to add a new jobs page. Let's use my existing components. And let's use Material UI for styling. So pretty standard. I probably could save those two commands that I keep telling Builder, use my existing components, use Material UI for styling, and a .builder rules config. And we can drop more documentation about this. Someone asked earlier, is a question around, what if I don't want Builder to use everything I've done? What if I know that there are files or like subdirectories, they're just nasty for whatever reason. It's not code that I necessarily want your platform to use as context for how future pages should be built. We all do that, right? So I was going to say you can actually set up the config file to ignore certain directories, certain files. And you can also set up a config file, as I was just saying, to include persistent context. So maybe I would set up my .builder rules file to say, use my existing components wherever possible, pull in Material UI components, and that way I can keep my designs a little more consistent even though I'm still giving myself the flexibility to create new components if I want to, right? Because I can still ask Builder to create a new component and ask it not to use Material UI for those if there are additional things I want to expand upon. So hopefully that makes sense. This one, It was a little bit more complex, so it'll probably take a second. I don't know, Chris, do we have any questions? Let's see, anything? See
Yeah,
a Q&A.
looking at
Oh,
Q&A.
cool.
I was one in chat actually. How can
Yeah.
you integrate your own design system or reference your own component style? That's something we're doing here. Obviously, with the design system we're using is material in this case. But you could have your own design system within your code base and it would get scanned. And then component style, again, those get scanned in your code base, but you can also set up component mapping within Figma and within the code base.
I will say maybe one caveat too to that earlier question around integrating a design system. For our enterprise license, you can actually integrate directly with your enterprise design system. And so that would probably be the recommended path if you do have a mature or, like a bespoke enterprise design system for your organization, just because I can apply this context that's persistent and it helps. And especially for bigger, design systems like MUI, like Ants, like Shadzian, we can probably get a lot of that context and pull it in anyway, right? But if you have anything that's proprietary or bespoke, the component mapping that enterprise offers is going to kind of really make sure that integration is followed with your design system. Now, let me see. Whoops, let me exit out of the chat just briefly because we got, I think, our implementation plan. Okay, let me pull forward that jobs page and let's see how that came over because that was a more, complex page. And I can see right off the bat, a lot came over, but this didn't totally stack the way I want, right? And that's okay because we can iterate whenever we pull over a design. And so what I'm going to try to tell Builder is I'm going to give it some wording here around the way I want this design to be incorporated, right? So I still accepted it because the base is there. I'm going to say that the filters column, this column on the left, and the job cards, that one that's on the bottom right now, should be aligned horizontally. Let's see if my prompting to AI is good. Let's say do not vertically stack the filters column and the job cards. And hopefully that's enough to give Builder the context that, hey, this was mostly right, but I want you to do this slightly differently. And so it should look at those components and then adjust our spacing and kind of the alignment we did here to hopefully bring those up onto, one width of the page. Let's see if that worked. Ah, sweet. Okay, every once in a while you speak to the large language models the way they like to be spoken to. And so I'm going to click accept on this one for now, but let me actually just click on the page because I want to talk through kind of what we're seeing, right? And so we've integrated the material UI components. So I can actually type in, like maybe I'm searching for product designer. Hey, or maybe I'm searching for Alexis, the greatest. Yeah, could that be? I can put in locations, I can toggle these buttons, right? So this is coming over with the interactivity, which is pretty cool. If I wanted, I could pull in sample data to maybe make these more relevant. I mean, some of these changes are things that might even be quicker as I'm doing that myself once I've got the base for all this code generated. But at least we've got all these cards kind of in the way we want. And then, I can already kind of see where these menus, where this pagination, where all that could go in the future. So pretty happy with this as a base. I will say, there's a few things I'd probably like to iterate on here. We've got a navigation bar, and it's actually one thing in our app that's missing across the board, right? So ideal world, I think what we do next is we actually pull up iTerm again, and let's make this app bar universal, and let's also make it a little more useful for us. And so I'm going to say, let's add each page as a nav item on the navigation bar on the jobs page, because we want to be really specific here. And let's say home, about, what else do we have? Jobs and login are our pages right now. So ideally, just with that guidance, Builder's going to take this specific navigation menu, add in those other pages. Maybe I'll link to them out of the box. Maybe I'll have to prompt it to do so. And then I might need to follow up and ask Builder to actually apply this across the board, but we'll see just how it interprets that. And then we'll just keep iterating and refining and going from there. So hopefully this is kind of a good example of the way that as we're working through development, how I would be prompting the tool in order to get the changes that I want. And there's still going to be some stuff that I refine or tweak on my own later, right? But at least for kind of the bulk of this, it's really helpful to have Builder automatically pulling in this logic and then interpreting my commands to it. Let's see. I think it just got reloaded. Sweet. Okay, so I have my home. Yay, it did automatically link. I just don't have this on all the other pages yet. And so what I'm going to want to do is actually modify this. So let's say I'm going to accept that. I want to add the app bar. That's what it's calling itself, isn't it? Yeah, add the app bar to every page in my app. And then let's also say, give that login nav item a distinct background color. So it is different from the other nav items, just because it's a little bit special, right? It's our login, it's where we want to direct users to. We've got search bar on the right. It's already kind of distinct because of the spacing. So maybe not user experience best practices, but just something I want to see in my prototype. Now in this one, I'll probably let it run. Maybe, let's see, we'll take a look at that Q&A tab because I think we've got stuff adding up. So while this runs, let me look and see what we can answer. Okay, I'll take Rogers really quickly. Yes, you can export just plain HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Yeah, so if you want to do that within a repository, absolutely, you can. Yeah, you can export conditions and variables logic. For sure, on the Figma variable side, the conditions, I believe so. I kind of need to see an example to see exactly what that looks like within Figma, but I believe so. Yes, we do have SOC compliance. We're SOC 2 Type 2 compliant, and we don't train upon enterprise customer data, upon like this right now, as we're pulling this context, is not training the AI. So we can actually probably follow up with more around our AI usage and even terms of service, like with the data and compliance in mind specifically. But really good question there, Roger, around yeah, how this works and what's training upon. Now, I did see this finish, so I'll mark those as answered for now, and let's return to looking at this. And let me actually just minimize my Q&A tab. So what did we get here, right? So we got the login button. Cool, that should link to login. We've got jobs, we've got about, we've got home. Is it the most beautiful nav bar in the world? I'm starting to think so, but maybe we'll disagree on the chat. Let's see, I think I'm pretty happy with that. Yeah, Chris, what do you think? Anything else we want to do here before maybe we start having some fun for the designers in the crowd and do some design with AI?
Yeah, no, that's looking good to me. I think we should show off design with AI. Be good for you to see.
Thanks, Joe. Make the logo bigger. Should I just ask it to make the biggest logo possible? There's a part of it. Yeah, we'll get to that. We'll have some fun afterwards. Let me hop back into my Figma file. I like that though. So new
Right.
tab, new use case, new world. So far, I've been doing a lot of stuff that's probably going to appeal more to our developers in the audience, right? Like folks who are actually doing that code-based integration. This is one for my designers and maybe more content authoring folks. So you can actually create, and this is where I need to find the wording. You can create things to use in Figma, so new screens, new component sets, new components themselves. And we can do that by prompting here in the Design with AI tab. And so for this right here, I am going to, let's attempt to create some alert banners, right? So let's say create a component set of alert banners. I love a good alert banner. These banners should be full page width. I think that'll be nice. And then let's say that each banner should include, that's not how you spell include, an icon to dismiss on the right-hand side of the banner. And I think that's good. So a lot of language. If you click on any of those examples, actually on the bottom, it's trained me a lot more about the way that the AIs consume the prompting we give them. So a lot of those, if you click on them, are multiple sentences specifying exactly what we want to see. So let's see how this comes across. Hopefully we'll see those different severity levels. Okay, cool. Got one. A happy, successfully saved. Starting to get into yellow territory. And then maybe we see some severe ones that we can put all over anything that Chris Bud develops.
Yeah,
This
you're not wrong.
looks this looks good. Okay, let me give Builder a little thumbs up here. If I wanted to, I could keep prompting. I could keep, clicking through this and getting more and more and more. Once again, I want to apologize for my design taste, but to me, this is pretty good. I mean, it works across breakpoints. I could click get code, go straight into Builder, generate the code from there. But what I actually want to show you all is doing this import into Builder flow first. And so I could, once again, click Builder at this point, but I don't necessarily need to because, once again, for those designers in the crowd, maybe you actually want to use this on your designs, right? Maybe you want to pull this into different pages or you want to create design components out of these. I can take something like, let's take this scheduled maintenance one. Let me just select that layer. Let's see if I can actually do a design thing. And maybe I want to add this, onto this page right here. And so I can paste that in, put this right here. And hey, look at that. Like maybe I want to now pull this into Builder and start to prototype from that point. But let me actually go back to my generate alerts because what I'd actually like to do, if you all will humor me, there's our alerts. Let me go back into that frame. I just want to add all of these into our login page so that we can play with them and make them interactive, actually using the context of the application. So I'm just going to take this frame. We're going to go through that flow we did earlier. So let me just export that design again. You get really used to this flow and kind of the different ways we can do it. We could go back to viewing the code in Builder, but I'm just going to integrate this directly because what I want to do, if we go in here and we click on the login page, is I actually want to put these above my login form. And so let me get out of that last session we were in. One thing too I can call out is that you'll notice there's this resume session. If maybe I've done a code generation, I click out of there and then I realize in the future, like, I want to go back and resume that and keep iterating or refining, I can just go back by clicking that. Now on this one specifically for adding them, I'm going to say, let's add the alert banners to the login page. And let me tell Builder where to put them. So let's say, place the banners above the login form. And I think that should give us a good spot to kind of add these to the page before we make them a little more interactive here. One thing I haven't done is tell Builder to use Material UI alerts components for them. So we'll have to kind of see whether or not we get an entirely new component or whether we're getting, and let's see, I think I'm getting the styling from Material UI, but maybe not the actual banners themselves. So depending on what you want, you can be prescriptive there, right? Like I could have said, like, only use the Material UI alerts, but I kind of like my components. So I'm going to let Builder do whatever interprets for that. And if I get new components out of it, that's okay with me. Yeah, so it looks like, let me just scroll up a little bit to show that I did get a new banner. I did get kind of some funky spacing on that last one. But let me take a look really quickly. Ooh, that's a fun one. The rest of these, I can obviously click this. It's kind of automatically, doing that dismissal. I think if I reload the page, I'll get them again. I'm gonna make some refinements to these, right? Because it's a work in progress. And so let me accept this and let me say, we'll fix the styling in a second, but let's just initially say when the banners are dismissed, they should be minimized. And let's say that users should be able to expand and dismiss the banners upon clicking minimized elements. Yeah. Something I've found too is if I'm making things interactive, sometimes the styling kind of gets like a second pass, even as I'm doing that second prompt, right? So we give Builder maybe another chance to see if it makes it a little bit prettier. And if not, we can keep iterating kind of on how that looks and feels, especially for that blue one with the system maintenance. Now, while this generates, maybe we have a chance to take another question because I know those are stacking up in the Q&A. Chris, what do you think? Do you want to, let's see.
Yeah, I mean, trying to answer them as we go along, but I can try and pull
Oh,
one
you
when we do
are?
live. I'm trying to keep up. There's a lot of questions.
Nice. Oh, here's one I can answer really quickly.
Yeah.
Best practices for internationalization. Yeah, some
Oh,
languages need UI adjustment. So what I would recommend is actually, if you can, for internationalization, include a prompt builder with a spec document. Like if there's public documentation on your standards for internationalization, if you have examples that you can point Builder to, context in the form of documentation really, 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 really helps it. So when I've done some simple prompting just through like the system in the past, I've pointed out like by Googling online internationalization, best practices, kind of given it that spec document. And that's helped a lot. So hopefully that's helpful. Yeah, Chris, anything you want to answer? I might do a little more cleanup on my banners in the meantime. Let me see how
yeah, sure.
those turned out.
It's one from Scott. Do you have
Uh-huh.
a Codebase connected in order to use AI in Figma? what if it's from scratch? You just need to have a builder space connected and be logged in the builder plugin. But you don't necessarily need to have like a fleshed out code base. So no, you can absolutely start from scratch in Figma, use the design with Figma tool, and then go from there.
I'm going to
What
try
else
one
have we
more thing
seen?
on this. I like my, sorry, I'll just explain what I'm doing in real time while you answer another one of those, Chris.
Yeah,
I
sure. Yeah.
like my warning one the best, and I'm just going to try to tell Builder to use the styling on this one and apply it to the others because they came out a little bigger, a little bit funkier than there. So I'll keep doing this in the background. But yeah, if you want to take another one of those, feel free.
Yeah, sure. There's questions about I guess what builder scans and what goes to the LLM. I think we kind of covered this with the certification we've got, but also you can use a builder ignore file, a bit like a git ignore file, just to not send, if you have secrets or .m files or whatever in your code, those won't be scanned, obviously. So you can use the builder ignore file. There's a good way to do that. What else we got? Yep, recording will be sent out later.
Let's see how this prompt was
Oh no, you
interpreted.
better once the recording is sent to you, you better share that. That's no problem. You better share it with your team.
And what'd you say, Chris? Was that to me? Sorry, I was
Oh no,
scanning
sorry.
code
There's
output.
just
No,
someone
no,
asked
no.
if they could share their recording afterwards. And
Oh,
yeah,
cool.
we'd encourage that. What else we got?
I do see a lot of questions in the chat. Yes, my wording worked. But I do want to say, hey, I shouldn't say anything yet. We still have more demo to go. I was gonna say, I am the god of AI. No, so this works so far, so
Very
that's
confident
good.
halfway through.
I know I've just done something terrible to the rest of my demo. That's never what you say during a live session. But looks like this is good. This uses my warning alert as everything else. Probably real world. Like I ideally would maybe, make my login text a little more visible here. I would probably add some padding on top of this, right? But for right now, like those are pretty easy changes to make and they're interactive. So that's actually pretty good for what I was hoping for from this. So maybe I'll pause here and knock out this last one, but this is our application so far, right? So we could have done a little bit more. We could change certain things within this. Pretty happy just from kind of a base, adding in screens, making it look and feel this way. I know we have one more kind of flow to walk through in terms of different look and feel and the way we're going to do that. But Chris, anything else you would add here before we maybe move on to that last flow?
I think it's looking good to me. No, I think yeah, we can show off the last row. We're good to go. Good to do.
Cool. And I know this last flow, we have a little bit of kind of load time while we run the AI. So I think we'll be able to hopefully get to a lot more questions in that regard.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, let me do that. And maybe actually before we do that, I haven't shown this so far, except I can actually show some of the changes we're actually making here, right? So I'm going to pull up my VS Code and I'm actually not within the right repo. Well, I shouldn't say I'm not within the right repo. This GitHub repository is from this repo right here, this base, because I'm in a mono repo. So let me pull this up in VS Code and just kind of show you all what we're actually seeing. There we go. In terms of the differences that Builder has created that we've done so far. So, we've made quite a few changes to these files because we've changed the layout, add the app nav bar. We've changed the actual, let's see, page to have that jobs page. We've had the login page that we've added. We've created a couple of new components. But one thing before I hop on that I do want to call out is that we're importing, actual material UI components. So we're not regenerating or recreating code that already exists, which is that's to me pretty awesome. The fact that we can pull this in. I probably could have, maybe done some more work and more prompting to incorporate, hey, we have this login form for Material UI. If that exists, I'm still kind of gaining familiarity across all the different design systems, but this is pretty good out of the box. So we're getting a lot of this reused and not entirely creating everything new. And just flipping through here, I mean, we can see that, we are pulling in that menu bar, that navigation from Material UI. We're doing some styling, right? Like we're adding in some different things for that. But overall, we've got, our job cards, our job directories. We've got that little job filter side navigation bar, the login form itself, which is using all of that, but then does have some of that custom error handling that we added in there around the validation for what's required or not. And then I think just lastly here, what do we have? Just this, well, the skeleton job cards. So this is what we've
Yep.
created so far, kind of the bulk of, what we've done. And there was a question around like, how much time did this save? It's really going to depend on your use case, right? Like for me, pulling all these templates and customizing them and refining and tweaking, I do prefer to do a little bit more of the back-end development, just personally, I'll say, like in terms of hooking up to
Mm.
data stores, sample data, having the front end mostly come across the way I want for look and feel saves me a lot of time because I'm not naturally more on the front end development side. But you can also prompt for other things depending on what your skills are, right? So I'm focusing a lot on leveraging this for, that look and feel from the visual, pulling from Figma. I think this does depend a lot on the use case, but hopefully this is a little bit helpful to show you, all of these different things that we had created as a base for us to iterate upon later. And I think the more you use the tool and adapt it to your use case, the more value you get out of it. We're not even talking component mapping during this session, which is a whole other thing that provides a lot of value out of the box for integrating with your design system, right? So hopefully that's a little bit helpful. I know, yeah, maybe there's I see the questions growing.
Mm.
We're definitely gonna spend some time on questions.
We are, yeah, definitely.
Cool. Well, then you know what? I'm gonna go into that last flow if that sounds good. We'll walk through that last flow pretty quickly, and then we'll try to hop into questions. So let me kind of get out of there, and what are we gonna do first to hop into here? Let's go back to our Figma file. I'm gonna minimize that. And I'm actually going to minimize, we'll just slide our local host over because we're not going to use that one anymore. Now, what I'd actually like to do is recreate just slightly what we were doing within this prototyping application and show you a flow that folks in the audience who are maybe more on the content authoring, digital design side might appreciate, and maybe less for our developers, although there's certainly still things to play with and use during this one. It's just going to be geared primarily towards that outcome, which is publishing and deployment, not necessarily generating the code, although we can. And so let me just go ahead. We're going to pull this design again, but we're going to do that other final option on the screen here, which is actually copying over this code to Builder. So let me grab this and let's actually hop into, do I have this pulled up? A login page, an empty login page. So this is a pretty simple application, I'll say by just way of introducing this. This is where I can actually drag and drop in content from Figma, or I can do things like pulling from AI templates, pulling from, different websites if I want to. That's the web import button. Even just having Builder generate code for me, like you'll see some of these auto prompts for. But for this one, I do want to paste in that form. So that's what I pulled from the Figma file. We do get, once again, kind of that visual across breakpoints. We can customize the breakpoints. But on this one right here, I just want to start by saying, like, let's style my login page. And let's have Builder just make this look a little bit prettier. It's prompting me for a style inspiration. So this is a little bit newer functionality where if there's a website, maybe my existing website, or even like a design system website, something that I'm trying to imitate the look and feel of, I can paste in that style inspiration link to this, and it's going to help Builder generate something that looks and feels more like that URL itself. So definitely a lot of experimentation you can do with this. I'm doing the MUI just to keep it kind of easy with what we've been doing so far. I do think this will take a second just because we are giving a
Yep.
pretty abstract prompt, style something and giving an inspiration
Yep.
link, purposefully trying to be a little bit vague to see what the AI does. But let's actually hop into some questions while we let that run. I think this is a good chance to do that. So I'm going to scroll. Let's see. Can you use existing assets from your code base to train? That is interesting. So not in Figma. I wonder if anonymous attendee could even elaborate on what existing assets from the code base they're thinking. The one thing I want to be careful about in that question is that train is different than what I would say, right? You can use things as persistent context in your code base. You can use patterns, you can use an example of, hey, our form field should look like this, and you can include it in that .builder rules context file if you're using the CLI, or custom instructions if you're using the dashboard product. Hopefully that answers that, but you can get fairly prescriptive if you do have existing assets in your code base that you'd like Builder to use as context. And hopefully folks saw that during the alert banner section. I did point Builder to use another component as an example for the others, I could have even pointed to different parts in the code base and said, like, this should look like my example page. This should look like my component for this section. So hopefully that's helpful there. And if I
We
didn't hit
also
upon what asset you were thinking, oh yeah, please.
we also use the builder instructions is a good way of doing that as well. You can say like where there's a logo, use our logo. Like use this asset in particular. Make sure that it pulls on stuff that you have in your application.
Now I see, okay, let's see. I see Christian's question, I think, is a pretty valid question for like, even in the precise mode, I can see a lot of things that make me nervous. Maybe Christian's on the design side of the house because I definitely have done things today that should make designers nervous. Oh no, I accidentally killed my login page styling in the background. Let's see if I can get that to regenerate. And if not, this is entirely why you never say that you're doing good with the AI. And then anyway, that's entirely my fault. Features in Figma that are not supported. I'll say that in terms of Figma features, we should be able to pull in the context, the properties, but what's really going to help here is component mapping if you need to get that one for one exactly. And so like the component mapping is going to be the strictest box you can put around the large language models. You can do other things like the context as I've been passing, but it's not as much of a hard and fast rule as it is just providing additional context that the large language models can use to then, create their output. And so I'm trying to be careful about the way when I say like use MI components, or MUI components. It's probably going to follow that for most of them, but it's more flexible than actually doing the component mapping and putting a much stricter limit upon what the large language models can generate and do. So hopefully that's a little bit helpful, Christian. I think that precise mode coupled with component mapping, coupled with persistent context is really the best way to capture everything within Figma. And even within the component mappings, you can do per component level mappings, per design token level mappings, or even generic mappings. If there's logic you need to capture that is not inherently tied to those other levels of items. Sorry, Chris, I answered a lot of those. Let me give you a chance to pick some
Yeah,
and,
no, did a great job. Let's have a look. Is there a guide to what's being set up here? Yeah, so we'll also send out the recording. We'll also do a blog post, but we have a lot of documentation around this. Is that Scott? So if you wanted to get set up with all this, we'll send the Figma we're using and the Codebase, and then we'll send also some resources after this as well to help you guys get started.
And let's see. I know. Okay, let's see. So
Oh yeah,
someone said, can we
we can send the
integrate?
Q&A as well.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Someone said, can we integrate with e-commerce solutions like Medusa.js? I would think so. I would actually use prompting to explore that to just see, are there, like where I'm using like use material UI for XYZ, I would potentially say if you have a design that has an integration point with Medusa.js, like ensure my button uses Medusa.js, ensure my shopping checkout component comes from Medusa.js, like things like that. I'm probably not capturing the exact language, but that's what I would start to try in terms of testing out the prompting and integrating something like that. I've seen external libraries used successfully for use cases like internationalization, obviously unit testing. There's all sorts of unit testing frameworks you can do. Oh my goodness. And Alexis always says something. And then, you know what? We're going to try one last thing here because I made this work right beforehand. So we're going to have some fun. Let me get a little more prescriptive here. Let's say style this login form like material UI. And let's say give a background color. And if not, we're going to drag and drop some components. We're going to create a form. Yeah, and you know what? As I say it out loud, I think there's one other thing that I might even do before we do this. So let's actually add Builder or ask Builder to do a different thing. So let's say add a footer with some sample links. Let's say use material UI for styling the footer. Yeah, let's give that a try. Because sometimes it's my
Yeah.
prompting too, and I can ask something the same way or a slightly different way, and then I can make the system upset with me. So this is an Alexis problem, but it's a good chance to answer more questions. Let's see. Can I change the style of mobile view and keep the web design as is? That is a good question. Yes. And actually, I'm trying to think if I have a good example. I'll try to do that while we're talking through this flow, just because a lot of the rest of the demonstration or the webinar prototyping session can be fairly free form. So I'll show you how we can keep the style of web as it is, and then change the mobile view for something, maybe inherently specific or nuanced to native. I think there was another question. Oops, I'm looking at the chat, and I should be looking at the Q&A because I know that we've been asking people to put things in Q&A. We can output into Flutter, so that's a yes. I have seen
Yeah.
folks who output into Flutter. Let me just mark this as done. Let me mark that as done. Sweet, we've got a footer. I knew it was my wording. I knew I could maybe make the AI come back around and like me again.
That
Um,
the vague prompt got you there.
I know. And that's actually, I mean, it's good kind of during the prototyping use cases. You'll see that when I've been more specific, when I've added additional context about what I want, it's generally better, it's quicker. I mean, we get a much better result. So it's a good lesson really for all of us. And I'm going to say one other thing. So I'm going to say, let's add a simple navigation bar at the top of the page. And once again, I'm just going to say that I want to use Material UI for styling the nav bar. And so, I want to show a couple of things here before we kind of wrap up on this visual as we're approaching the top of the hour. Definitely save time for getting through more of these questions because you all are asking really good questions here. And thank you for sticking put with me as um, I'm walking through this. I do see someone who put in a question I think is super valid because I keep putting in some of the same prompts. I'm an anonymous attendee said, can we store anything that we're promoting repeatedly? And I'm guessing this is probably like even how I'm repeating some of my prompts a lot. Yes, you can. And that's actually where that dot builder rules config that I keep mentioning, I'll definitely make sure we send that as the follow-up because that's where you could put anything that you're repeating. And so I think that's a really good question. Let's see. What other ones can we look at? Can you load any libraries you need? Hopefully that's become clear by this point, but you should be able to load libraries. That is a fun and a wild little image I got there. So let's actually remove that. That looks a little bit better. Okay, that's a fun little search bar. I must have something funny in one of the parts of my application here, but now we've got a header. That's pretty normal. Like I probably want to add a logo or something to this, but I can accept.
Yeah.
Now, the one thing I want to show, especially during this more visual flow, is that because we're in the visual editor within Builder, there's actually a couple things we can do here that code-based flow wasn't necessarily as focused on. So if I want to create elements that are reusable, I can say, hey, we have this header. Sorry, this is a footer. I don't know what I'm saying. I'm going to just save this webinar because we've created it in real time during the session. Maybe I want to do the same for this, where I'm going to save that as my header now. Let's call it our webinar one. For this form, it's kind of the same basic thing that we did already. I might just loosely kind of create some styling for this. So let me actually go into my style tab. Let's create a background color, just something to make this a little more exciting. That's fine. That's pretty enough. There we go. Perfect. Beautiful. And from here, I could actually publish this to the website, right? So I have this, website that I have staged. Maybe I'm a designer who's working on a prototype. I'm not the, end all be all for prototypes here, but I can start to get out like this footer I'm creating. I could start to get out, this header that I'm creating, maybe start to even incorporate some loose functionality, prompt for, some interactivity within this. And so I can actually publish this without needing a developer to deploy it for me, right? And that's kind of the real power of what we can do within this section. And then I can create other pages. So I think I may have hopped to the prototype to show what that looked like. Maybe I didn't hop to the front end as I say it out loud now, but I have this basic home page. And with that header and footer I just created, I can add that to my other pages. And so this is the one we just created. Got a few different examples here. Let me make sure I drag that on. Of course, I did not drag that on right where I wanted it to go. Let's just go back in here and grab that. So I can pop that up here, get my header. Maybe my spacing and my styling is slightly different on this page, but I can modify that later. But really, if I can spell that, what we can do is kind of get that consistent look and feel. Oops, let me drag on that one for what we're trying to do and still get that for each of our pages, right? And so this is something that I call out just to say, like, there are routes, even if you're not necessarily someone who's going to be integrating with the code base, you can still play with and prototype some basic stuff, publish the updates to the site. Let me see if we've got that updated on our side. I'm just going to view that current draft. So I can see, what this looks like. Go to my about page. It's still pretty basic. Do different things from this. And my pricing page isn't hooked up yet, but still start to build out a prototype that's useful to my team. So I'll probably wrap it up here just because I know I'm starting to, run into our question time, but hopefully that's helpful and folks have seen something or at least kind of a different strategy for how they can do this. The only last thing I'll say here is that even if we are doing this publish workflow, where maybe we're staging to a prototype, publishing that via API, developers can still come in here if we have digital or design folks who are creating these, and we can still get this code out of this. We can copy this content into one of our builder developed spaces. And so there's ways to kind of get the code no matter how you're authoring it. The one benefit of this space is that we can tie in content governance, approval workflows, publishing to an app, and kind of remove some of the technical pieces out of there. But I will actually go ahead and hop back into our slides and then we'll take questions because I know I have kind of talked us to the end of the hour. So thank you all for your patience and your questions so far. Now I'm going to go ahead and get back into the screen share here. So let me share that. And let me even just make sure that we're just looking at that one and not seeing our windows. Perfect. So maybe Chris, I'll transfer back to
Yep.
you. I'm going to take a brief coffee break, but here we go.
No, yeah, you earned it. Yeah, thanks, Alexis. So yeah, outcomes what we've done today so far. We generated contextually aware code into our code base. There's obviously used elements that are already in our code base, like material UI components, to keep it consistent. We then visually styled and refined our prototype. So if you remember that first one, we pulled from Figma into the builder UI, and we made some changes there before taking it out to code. We built on top of our existing prototype, so we were able to use the CLI tool to prompt back and forth and make some changes. And then lastly, we generated some ready to publish designs. So we took it into the publish kind of element of builder and actually published, direct to web. Yeah, so we'll take some questions now.
What we've been
Sorry,
doing
losing
along
my
the
voice
way
at the end
because we
there.
knew we were going to have. No. I think everyone's coming under with a cold or a sickness at this point in the year. Now, let me pull up these questions. We've got so many. Oh, this is a really interesting one from Adam that just popped up when I pulled that. Can you use AI to audit your application and reduce the number of one-off buttons or style used across the application? Say you have 5 button styles and you only want 2 to 3 used in the app. I actually think you could. I think you could run that at the base and say, standardize my buttons to use, provide that very specific example of which one you wanted to use styling wise, kind of like what I did with the alert banners, and then say, apply this throughout my application. You should see that reflect through the application. That's a really good question. Chris asked one too, and we can maybe hop back and forth, Chris. Sorry, I know I'm hopping into these right away. Chris asked a question about, can you generate a public URL for getting customer feedback? Yes, you can generate a public URL for getting customer feedback. I would actually use that last float potentially. Yeah, Adam Gomez. Sorry, I saw that in the chat too. Yeah, I'm probably cleaning up spacing across the app. I think in my apps alone, that probably would have been a good thing to kind of run at the
Yeah.
end. But you can generate that public URL for getting customer feedback. And I think that that would best be done through the published product. Yeah, I'm happy to. I'm trying to think if we have a document that would kind of guide through that, but it would be something you could share external facing with folks for sure. Now, let's see. Was there one that you wanted to answer, Chris? Do you see anything I'm scanning through?
Yeah, there's a lot now. I think we've answered quite a lot of these already. There's quite a few duplicates.
Oh, here's one. So from Scott, do we need to have a code base connected in order to use AI
Yeah.
Figma? What if this was a scratch site with no code base yet? You could use like a hello world, very basic code base. The one thing that I would say to be aware of if you're going to do that is that you're not really providing much context from the start, right? So your generation is probably going to be better as you're accepting certain code generations and then expanding your code base because that's expanding your context, right? So I do think that that's definitely something you can start with. It's just from scratch. But just remember that the more context you have as you're starting to build that out, you're probably going to get more accurate results that incorporate the coding patterns, the styling that you actually like, just because you're going to be adding incrementally into that application. And I think I just missed it. Shoot, I meant to I meant to mark that one as answered live, but I'm sure we'll find
Oh,
things.
I did that.
Oh, perfect. And what time are we at? Sorry, we've got about 2 minutes. Maybe we both
Yeah.
pick a question and then we might have to wrap, folks. But thank you. Thank you so much so far.
Yeah.
Let's see. Hopefully, Roger, we showed, can you share the code produced before the end of the webinar? Hopefully we showed right around that point. If you want to see it afterwards, I'm thinking I probably could make a pull request to my own repository. If you'd like to see what that looks like. I'd also say testing, with your own application is probably the best way to just see what the code output's going to be, because you can see what I'm doing, but it's not really real until you try it yourself, right? So I would actually, if you want, get started with those 2 resources we passed over, and then follow along in the webinar, the guide afterward, that's going to include the prompts that I use, and you can try that. Oh, good. Okay. Thank you so much, Roger. I didn't see your comment there, but I'm glad you asked it. So I think we're on the same mental wave. Yeah, Chris, did you have one that you wanted to answer? I know we're on the last minute.
Yes. Oh yeah, that's cool. Like, if you want to go to the next slide list, just to
Oh,
Joe's point.
yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone. Yeah, Joe, good call out. So this, if people want to scan this, if you want to go get a demo, if you want to talk to me further, I do talk to a lot of folks on the enterprise multi-brand side. You would probably get a very similar rambling introduction by me. Thank you all for the questions and the discussion. I think we're right about at time. But let's see. Yeah, I hope this was helpful.